നമസ്കാരം. ഫ്രൈഡേ ഓപ്പൺ ഹൗസിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം. ഇത് നമ്മുടെ 15th വീക്കാണ്, 15ാമത്തെ ആഴ്ചയാണ്. തുടർച്ചയായിട്ട് വി ഹാവ് ബീൻ ഡൂയിങ് ദിസ്. യൂഷ്വലി വി ഇൻവൈറ്റ് ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻറ്റ് പീപ്പിൾ. നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ വ്യക്തിമുദ്ര പതിപ്പിച്ചു എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്ന ആൾക്കാരെയാണ് നമ്മൾ ഗസ്റ്റായിട്ട് വിളിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ജനറലി വി ആർ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റഡ് ഇൻ നോയിങ് അബൌട്ട് ദെയർ ഹിസ്റ്ററി, അവരുടെ ഒരു കരിയർ ഹിസ്റ്ററി, അവരെങ്ങനെ ഹൗ ഡിഡ് ദേ റീച്ച് ഓൾ ദീസ് പ്ലേസസ് ഒക്കെ അറിയാനുള്ളൊരു കൗതുകം ഉണ്ടാവും. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെയുള്ളവരാണ് നമ്മൾ പൊതുവെ വിളിച്ചത്. അപ്പോൾ ശ്രീനിവാസൻ സാറിനെയൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ ഇങ്ങനെ പ്രോഗ്രാം കുറേ കൂടെ വലുതായി വരുന്നതനുസരിച്ച് വിളിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി വെയിറ്റ് ചെയ്യായിരുന്നു. ആദ്യമൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ കുറേ സുഹൃത്തുക്കളെയൊക്കെയാണ് വിളിച്ചത്. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് നമ്മളൊരു 10-15 രാജ്യങ്ങളിലെ സുഹൃത്തുക്കൾ സ്ഥിരമായിട്ട് ഇത് കാണുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഇതിൻ്റെ ഫോമാറ്റ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു 15-20 മിനിറ്റ്സ് ഗസ്റ്റ് ഒന്ന് സംസാരിക്കും. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് പിന്നെ പീപ്പിൾ ആസ്ക് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ്, ക്ലാരിഫിക്കേഷൻസ്. അതാണ് നമ്മുടെ പ്ലാൻ. പിന്നെ ശ്രീനിവാസൻ സാറിനെ പറ്റി അതുകൊണ്ട് മുഖവരൊന്നും വേണ്ട, ഐക്കോണിക് ഫിഗറാണ്, എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാം. അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ ജീവിതത്തിൻ്റെ എല്ലാ ഘട്ടങ്ങളും പ്രശസ്തമാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അത് വലിയൊരു ഭാഗ്യമാണ്. അദ്ദേഹം സിവിൽ സർവീസിനൊക്കെ പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഞാനൊക്കെ സ്കൂൾ കുട്ടികളാണ്. അതിലേക്ക് പോകുമ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ കുടുംബാംഗങ്ങളൊക്കെ അമ്മാവന്മാർ ആ ടൈപ്പ് ചെറുപ്പക്കാരുടെയൊക്കെ അന്ന് അവരുടെ പ്രായത്തിലുള്ള ഒരു ഐക്കണാണ്. എന്നെയൊക്കെ ഇങ്ങനെ ചൂണ്ടിക്കാണിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. പിന്നെ എനിക്ക് ഓർമ്മയുണ്ട് സാറിനൊക്കെ ഞാൻ സ്കൂളിൽ പഠിക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് തോന്നി IFS കിട്ടുന്നതൊക്കെ അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് ബ്രദറിനുമൊക്കെ. അപ്പോൾ അവർ പഠിക്കുമ്പോഴേ അവരെ പറ്റി ലോകം ചർച്ച ചെയ്തിരുന്നു. പിന്നെ ഞാനൊക്കെ പുറത്ത് ഒരുപാട് രാജ്യങ്ങളിൽ ജീവിക്കുമ്പോൾ പല രാജ്യങ്ങളിലും ചെല്ലുമ്പോൾ മലയാളിയാണ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇന്ത്യക്കാരെന്നൊക്കെ പറയുമ്പോൾ അന്വേഷിക്കുന്ന ഒരു പേരാണ്. ഞാൻ 4 മാസം വരെ ഞാൻ വാഷിങ്ടൺ DC-യിലായിരുന്നു, 5 മാസം വരെ. അപ്പോൾ അവിടെ അമേരിക്കയിൽ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്ന ഒരാളാണ് മലയാളികൾക്കിടയിൽ, ഇന്ത്യക്കാർക്കിടയിൽ. അപ്പോൾ അത് വലിയ അഭിമാനം തോന്നുമായിരുന്നു. അദ്ദേഹമായിട്ട് എനിക്കും വളരെ അടുത്ത് പരിചയപ്പെടാൻ പറ്റിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. അദ്ദേഹം ചെയ്യുന്ന വിദേശ വിചാരം ആ പരിപാടിയിലും പങ്കെടുക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നു. പ്രാവശ്യം അമേരിക്കയിൽ നിന്ന് വന്നപ്പോൾ അതിലും പങ്കെടുക്കാൻ പറ്റി. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെ ഒരു വ്യക്തിപരമായിട്ടും ഒക്കെ നമുക്കൊക്കെ വലിയ സന്തോഷമുള്ളൊരു അനുഭവമാണ് അദ്ദേഹമായിട്ട് സംസാരിക്കുന്നത്, അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ പരിപാടികൾ കാണുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അതിന് റിട്ടയർമെന്റ് ഇപ്പോൾ പറയുന്നു 15 വർഷമായി എന്ന് പറയും, തിരിച്ചു ട്രിവാൻഡ്രത്ത് വന്നിട്ട്. അതിനുശേഷവും ഓരോ ദിവസവും നമ്മൾ ശ്രദ്ധിക്കുന്ന ദിവസങ്ങളായിരുന്നു. വിവിധ മേഖലകളിൽ കമ്മിറ്റികളിൽ പല ലീഡ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ആളായിട്ട്, ഗവൺമെൻറ് അഡ്വൈസറായിട്ട്, അപ്പോൾ ഒരു ടെലിവിഷനിലൊക്കെ നിറഞ്ഞു നിൽക്കുന്ന ആളാണ്. അദ്ദേഹത്തിൻ്റെ മേഖലയിൽ പലപ്പോഴും ഹീസ് ദി ഫൈനൽ വേർഡ്. നമ്മൾ പലപ്പോഴും അവസാന അഭിപ്രായം അറിയാൻ വേണ്ടി ചോദിക്കുന്ന, ടെലിവിഷൻകാരൊക്കെ ചോദിക്കുന്ന ആളായിട്ടാണ് കാണുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ സാറിനെ ഞങ്ങൾ സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുകയാണ് ഇതിലേക്ക്, ഫ്രൈഡേ ഓപ്പൺ ഹൗസിലേക്ക്. ഇന്ന് വന്നിട്ടുള്ള പങ്കെടുക്കാൻ വിവിധ രാജ്യങ്ങളിൽ പങ്കെടുക്കുന്ന സുഹൃത്തുക്കൾ എല്ലാവരെയും സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. സാർ, നൗ ഓവർ ടു യു. സാറിന് വിച്ച് ലാംഗ്വേജ് യു ആർ കംഫർട്ടബിൾ യു ക്യാൻ യൂസ് ദാറ്റ്. പൊതുവെ മലയാളമാണ് അറിയുന്നവരാണ്, പക്ഷേ ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് മനസ്സിലാകുന്നതാണ്. സാർ ഇനിഷ്യലി ചോദിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞാണ്.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lal. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to talk to you and also to all your Friday colleagues. I'm speaking in English because it is easier, but maybe when we go to the conversation part, we can speak in Malayalam. Some of these things that relating to my work, it's probably easier to express it in English. Otherwise, you have to look for words.
Hello.
I think there's some conversation going on.
Hello.
എല്ലാവരും ദയവായി ഓഡിയോ ഓഫ് ചെയ്യുക. എന്നെ ഹോസ്റ്റ് ആക്കോ സാർ?
ടെലിവിഷൻ ആണോ?
Okay, sir. Continue.
Sorry for that disturbance.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk about one's own career. And of course, as you said, I've been in the news, but there are several times when you are not in the news, but doing very many interesting things. Foreign service, you said about different experiences and the ability to get to be in different places, etc. And that is really the greatest attraction of the foreign service. Somebody said that this is a one-way ticket to stardom, because you are destined to be in places where you would never have been otherwise. And you are destined to meet people you would never have met. And you are destined to do things which you would never have done elsewhere. And that is special about the foreign service. And it is a kind of trajectory, unless you make a grave mistake, will take you into different circumstances. And sometimes you do very useful things, sometimes you do mundane things, but always interesting and always beyond your reach generally. And that is what I have found very interesting about foreign service, because there are so many jokes about diplomacy, what a diplomat is. The most famous one is a diplomat is an honest gentleman who lies abroad for his country. You know, the catch is on the word lie. But those days are over. You cannot lie anymore. There was a time when you could lie because there was no communication. And that is when, of course, ambassadors were more important, because they were talking on behalf of their country and there was nobody to contradict it. So those were the happy days. You know, an ambassador is sent off to a country and he doesn't come back for 10 years, 15 years. And he's free to do whatever he wants, no instructions. And that's why they are called extraordinary and plenipotentiary. An ambassador is an extraordinary and plenipotentiary. Now, these days, there is not much extraordinariness or plenipotentiariness because communications are so fast. In fact, one might wonder why you need diplomats, why you need ambassadors when prime ministers and presidents can pick up the phone and speak to each other. So, professions, all professions have changed. And particularly under the pandemic, of course, the diplomacy has become much less attractive because the fun of the foreign service and diplomatic career is traveling around, living in different places, meeting people, discussing, etc. Now you must have seen the UN General Assembly hall, which is totally empty. Normally it should be teeming with people at this particular time in the year. You cannot throw a stone without hitting a foreign minister or a prime minister. But that has changed. So diplomacy is not as interesting today as it used to be. And I hope the new norm does not settle in for this kind of diplomacy. And that will be very sad for my successors. Because in an exciting career, there is no dull moment, whether you are in New York or you are in Rangoon or you are in Thimphu or you are in Fiji, wherever. Always the action is where you are. And you have to be there where the action is. And many things that do may not be of such great importance to India. But there is something that you have to safeguard is the name of India. Because you are the best known face of the country wherever you are. And they may not know anything about India except you. So the fact that you represent the country is a heavy responsibility, because every moment you have to be conscious of the fact that you are representing this great country and you should not let it down. And at the same time, it is also a pride that you are speaking for 1.3 billion people. Of course, the 1.3 billion people never heard about you, but you are always speaking for them. And that's a great privilege also. But many people wonder what does a diplomat do because of all these various strange definitions. But if I were to ask what exactly does an ambassador or a diplomat do, I simply say that you represent your country. And whether you represent the country in A, B, or C country, we have a relevance, we have an importance, we have answers to give. And this makes you feel that you are doing something worthwhile. But it is not always so glamorous as we all think. I have been in situations where things were very difficult and problematic. And if you look at any career, any foreign service officer's career, at least one military coup and one accident or one unpleasant thing would have happened. In my case, several things have happened. I've been expelled from Fiji. I've been bodily, physically attacked in Kenya. I had, various kinds of problems in Myanmar. So, but this is all in the game of the job, and how you respond to this is the test that you have. And of course, the most exciting things I did was basically at the UN, because I spent a long number of years, not only in New York, but also in Nairobi and Geneva and Vienna. Not because anybody planned my career like that, but it happened like that because I liked what is called multilateral diplomacy, which is you deal with 193 countries at the same time. which interestingly is much more exciting than dealing with one country. Because when you are in one country, in a bilateral work, you tend to think that that is the center of the world. And most diplomats make that mistake. So if I am in Bhutan, I think Bhutan is the center of the world. Everything else disappears from your vision. And also and therefore you have exaggerated notions of each of these countries that you work in. And but when you go to the United Nations, you find the comparative importance of countries in the world stage. And there are two kinds. One, of course, the powerful countries who project themselves as powerful nations. They even manipulate the United Nations to their advantage. But there are also, interestingly, very many smaller countries who exert an influence much beyond the importance of their countries because the personality of the diplomat. This is very interesting. You know, some country like Vanuatu, you wouldn't care about it, but you have a young Vanuatu ambassador in the UN whom everybody knew. Nobody knew where Vanuatu was. So on the one hand, if you are the American ambassador or an American diplomat, you don't have to explain what you are or you don't have to prove yourself. India also, you don't need to do that. But there are several countries which are not known except for the diplomatic missionaries. And so there are all kinds of interesting things take place, people not knowing where exactly that person stands in the ideological framework, particularly during the Cold War. And the cultural interactions. For example, in the US, when I was there at the UN for the first time, we were very much close to Europe, to Eastern Europe, Soviet Union, Moscow. This was during the Cold War. And therefore, we had many consultations with that group of countries. But that was more pain rather than a pleasure because those was hardcore discussions. But when we wanted to relax, we went across to the bar and had a drink with an American or a French or one European or someone like that. So you had a professional affinity with certain countries, but personal affinity with others. And this personal affinity is even more interesting when it comes to Pakistani diplomats. You know, we fight with each other in the hall, but the moment you come out, the first person to greet you and hug you is a Pakistani diplomat. So it is a very interesting career to be one of the 193 countries, meeting each other every day and understanding each other's problems and negotiations. Because the thing that diplomats do is to get what you from the other person without having to give away much on your side. Because foreign policy, the objective is not simply to have good relations or trade or anything else. There are fundamental things that we need. For instance, a peaceful atmosphere is very important for development. So if you have to fight a war with China and Pakistan every 3 months, then it's not possible for you to have economic development. That's why if you follow India's approach to even our countries which are not friendly to us, is to contain the conflicting situations and negotiate a way in which you can have a peaceful life for your country. And that is so because, where diplomacy ends, war begins. So once a war begins, it is a different story. It will be handed over to other people. But the idea is not let these things, let differences grow into disputes or disputes go into conflicts. And that is where you have the greatest responsibility. And the second is that no country in the world is self-sufficient. Even the richest country in the world, like United States, they need so many people. They need brain power from us. And all of you have live abroad, give so much to the United States, which we don't even realize how much you have contributed to it. And similarly, we need many more things. We need resources, we need technology, we need experience. And so every country needs to get something from the other. And you have no leverages. Because what we normally do is when you are posted to a country, the ministry or the foreign secretary or the foreign minister outlines some of the objectives. Not always very systematically, but here and there they'll say that this is what we ought to achieve. And then you have to look at your own abilities. What are you capable of? How do you really deliver? Because you have no power. I always tell my civil service students that if you want power, don't join the foreign service. Join the IAS or the IPS. Because what you are doing is to exercise power of the sovereignty of your country. But the sovereignty of country is of no relevance to any country that I go to as a diplomat. And what they are looking at you is the same way as we look at them. This is what is it that you can gain from this relationship. And therefore, it's a very, very delicate situation. You do not have the authority to seek anything. Most often, you don't have also anything to offer in terms of things that they are looking for. And this was true in the initial stages when I joined the service, when India didn't have anything to offer except what we now call the soft power or the smart power. You know, we had Mahatma Gandhi, we had Gautama the Buddha, we had the Mahabharata, all the, the big epics and stories and a legendary land, the rope tricks and the snakes and things like that. So those days when anybody wanted to compliment India, they would say, oh, what a rich culture, what is a great privilege to represent your country. But they would never talk of the present because they know that the present is not very, not very prosperous to deal with. And I remember one of my first assignments was in Japan. And there was this famous Expo 70. Japan had emerged from the Cold War. The common expression was phoenix-like. They had come back to life and become a powerful country. And 1970 was a landmark at that time, and they hosted this exhibition to show the world what Japan is today. And we had a nice pavilion, and what did we have there to show? Just a white tiger. The white tiger was the only attraction that we could offer, apart, of course, from the Darjeeling tea and hostesses in nice saris. But nobody cared to know why we were in that stage still. And every other pavilion was full of computers and gimmicks and all kinds of comforts of modern technology. But today, if there is an expo in Tokyo, I think we may probably have more things to show than Japan itself, because there is so much of Indian technology, which is a marvel anywhere. And in the old days, if they looked at you to look at their palm, a foreigner might catch you at the airport and say, oh, you're an Indian, please read my palm. And these days, he will say, oh, you're an Indian, please repair my laptop. So our relevance in the world has changed dramatically. And according to that, style has also changed. So I came back to the United States the second time at the UN. Then I came back the third time in Washington. By then, things had changed so much. And India's relations with the United States became what is called a decisive relationship, or a significant relationship of the 20th and 21st centuries. So to live through all these experiences and people seeing you in different ways, sometimes as a difficult country, because our general positions on many things were not part of the global consensus on some of these issues. Like, for example, our position on the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. I'm sure you must have all heard about it, where the whole world has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty except 3 countries, India, Pakistan, and Israel. Why? Pakistan has not signed simply because India has not signed, that's all. And Israel has not signed because they are not sure of the Arabs. Now they may sign because Arabs are getting friendly with them. But our position was singularly disruptive to the international consensus, because our position was that, yes, we do not want nuclear weapons. None of us should have it. So the NPT was moved by us to abolish nuclear weapons, to remove nuclear weapons from the face of the earth. But they manipulated in such a way that the 5 major countries kept their nuclear weapons. while they expected all others to abandon it or not acquire it. So things like that. Even on self-determination, we had a position which was different from the rest of the world, basically because of our Kashmir issue. Because we believe that self-determination in Kashmir was already exercised at the time of independence, when the Maharaja signed the accession treaty with India. But many people believe that the self-determination is available anytime for a people. Whenever they want to change their lifestyle, change their policies, they can change. They can change the country, they can split the country, you can move away, make separate states, etc., etc. This is unfortunately written in the United Nations Charter that every people has its right to self-determination. Again, we don't accept that. Similarly, we have a position on human rights that everything should depend on the genius of the people. What you consider violation of human rights may be a culture or a tradition in another country. So India is not a typical consensus country in the world. And that makes us more interesting to others. But also at the same time, they tend to exclude you from various things. Like when I was in Vienna, the Atomic Energy Agency, and we were looked upon as some kind of a maverick. And my best friends were the ambassadors of Israel and Pakistan, because we used to vote together, we used to speak similar language, and the rest of the world used to wonder why Pakistan and India, which are fighting all the time, are so friendly in the IAEA. So very, very strange kind of experience you get. And most of the time it's unexpected. Like, of course, the Indian diaspora was not very significant in our diplomatic life for a long time. But it changed during Rajiv Gandhi's time. Rajiv Gandhi was the first one who said, I expect people of Indian origin abroad to help me with technology, with financing, with management, expertise. How he brought Sam Pitroda to India and things like that. So he looked upon the Indian community abroad as a kind of a source for himself, for building India. And in return, he was willing to give them the facility of support, of looking for India for support in whatever circumstances. Many of you live abroad, must be familiar with this. But before Rajiv Gandhi, that was not our policy. Our policy was to leave our people alone in other countries. And even when they had difficulties, like in Burma, 1 million people were thrown out, Indians, without anything on their bodies except their clothes. 1 million people out in the open, and India did not say a word. We simply resettled them in different places in India. Similar things happened in South Africa. Similar things happened in the Caribbean. And it had not happened in Fiji, where we had more than 500,000, or half the population of Indian origin. And it was such a paradise. And then I was posted, I asked my predecessor as to whether there will be any interesting things to do. I mean, such a paradise, everybody's happy. I know I can snorkel and swim and do various things, but will there be any work to do? But he was a prescient man, and he told me, look, by the time you come here, it will be too interesting. You will regret having looked for interesting stuff. And sure enough, between his time and my time, a new political party emerged in Fiji, because till then, the political relationship was racial, in the sense that the Fijians on one side, the Indians on the other, and the Europeans. And there was a kind of social contract by which they decided that so many Indians, so many Fijians, so many Chinese, and that kind of a rather undemocratic constitution they had. And but suddenly there was a Labour Party which emerged, and the Labour Party decided that we must have a multiracial and non-racial government. And the Indians worked with some Fijians, etc. And they won the elections, one against the feudalistic kind of government they had for several years. I'm not talking about 1987. And a new government, half of it mostly Indians and Fijians, formed a government, and they started functioning extremely well. And those were 30 happy days for me, because they came to me to consult, because they needed an experienced person to tell them about what to do with the world, diplomatic things and everything else. But the 31st day, there was a military coup, and they were arrested and driven away in a military truck. All the ministers, including the prime minister, was a Fijian, not an Indian. And so I was in the middle of a crisis out of the blue, from a comfort zone to a war zone, as it were. And no instructions, no directions, because there was no communication with India. They had cut off everything. Those days, there was nothing except a teleprinter or a telephone. We had no fax, we had no internet. So in Delhi, they could not catch me as to where I was and what I was doing. They were just following international news, and I had no idea what they're thinking about me, what they were expecting me to do. So I did what I was supposed to do, that is to bring about some kind of a compromise between the parties concerned, because the Governor General was still in operation. So I met many times him secretly, trying to bring the Indian point of view and try to find some compromise. But the moment I got a connection with Delhi, they started telling me that I should immediately start fighting for the Indians. That is, no more diplomacy and racial harmony and all that you are seeking, because what they have done is nothing short of discrimination. This is apartheid. To treat people on the basis of the color of their skins is absolutely unacceptable. And some Fiji Indians had actually traveled to India and conveyed these messages to Rajiv Gandhi. And so I was summoned to Delhi, and I was told that the policy has changed. I said, okay, good. You tell me the policy. He said, yes, now you will fight for them. I said, well, that'll be rather unusual, because ambassadors are not meant to fight. We are supposed to apply the balm and make people comfortable, etc. I said, no, this situation is very different. And we have to stand up to them and say that you do not recognize this military government. And unless the democratic constitution is brought back, India will have nothing to do. In these circumstances, what you do is you withdraw your ambassador and the embassy is closed. That's what we normally do. But that would have been very traumatic to the Indian community. And therefore, Rajiv Gandhi decided that you stay there and fight as an ambassador. And so I said, this would be the most exceptional story in the world, that you have an ambassador in your country who doesn't recognize your government. Can you imagine a diplomat in Delhi saying that I don't recognize the Modi government? How many minutes will he survive in our country? Will we put on the next flight out? But here it was a different situation, because half the population was ours. And so we had every right to intervene. Of course, this is a debate that is going on. Now we are screaming at Trudeau for supporting the farmers. But we have done worse things with other countries. We don't remember that. We are screaming at Trudeau by saying that, who the hell are you to interfere in our internal affairs? But the kind of things I have done in Fiji, or others have done in Sri Lanka, or people have done in South Africa, I mean, we have no right to say non-interference in internal affairs. So when this is required. And 2 years, they tolerated me as a kind of leader of the opposition, as it were. No diplomat of India would have operated like that. But then finally, they found me too much of a nuisance. And when they imposed a new constitution on the poor Indians, they decided to throw me out, saying that I made an explosive speech against the government. I did not do any such thing. I was only talking about the situation and trying to comfort the Indians. That was my role. But they gave me 72 hours to leave, and I left. And after a few days, they closed the embassy also and asked everybody to leave. But what we did at that time, those 2 years, made sure that democracy returned to Fiji. 10 years later. And a new constitution was formed. And this is a very historic development where India stood up and fought and brought back freedom to the Indians in Fiji. Very few people know this because Fiji is not such an important country. But that is what changed Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's perspective on the Indians. And today what we see, India's enthusiasm to, give importance to Indians abroad, Pravasi Bharatiya Divas and Pravasi Samman and so many Pravasi Indians having great influence in our country, like Yusuf Ali or anybody else. So they all have a tremendous stake in India. They are playing a big role in the development of India. And all this is after Fiji, when our government started looking out and helping overseas Indians. So, and 25 years later, the government of Fiji invited me back. This has also never happened. Once your diplomat is expelled as persona non grata, then you never go back to that country. You never get a visa, actually. But when I was given 72 hours to leave, I said, I'll leave in 48 hours. Can I leave 24 hours behind so that I can come as a tourist one day? This is what I said at the airport. But 25 years later, those who are in the government, many of them young people who worked with me at that time, decided to invite me back to Fiji to thank me for all that the government of India did at that time. And it's a great story where India had the courage and the guts and the desire to work. And when Rajiv Gandhi told me, go and fight, finally I told him that, many things may happen. They may throw me out. They may shoot me. Anything can happen. And Rajiv Gandhi smiled and said, well, we'll make a sacrifice of you. So I said, that's very nice. There I went. So such exciting things happen. You never expect such things to happen in your career, in a diplomatic career. But that did not stop there. I went to Kenya afterwards, after New York. And Kenya had also the same kind of the diaspora problem. But that was very, very low in the sense that the numbers were small, Indians were small, but they controlled the economy. And therefore, they were very, very important. If you go to a Nairobi street, you will see more Indians than Africans. But once the evening comes and people start drinking, then it's always black people in the streets and not the Indians. The Indians will be happily in their homes. So it's a dual kind of life. But there was always an underlying tension between the Indians and the so-called Asians. And this used to happen all the time. And I had just arrived in Nairobi, and the elections were coming. And a few days later, I was told by the leader of the opposition that he would like to come and see me. And I thought it was a courtesy call since I had just arrived. And I met him. He later became president. And he came and told me that you are new here, so I'd like to brief you about the situation. And what I'd like you to do is to tell your Indians that they should also support the opposition, because the policy there was support the president, and the president will take care of you. It's virtually a dictatorship. So the Indians never bothered to give money to the opposition or anything like that. So this is the message that he gave me, that we might win this election. And if they don't support us and only support the Moi government, things will not be very pleasant when we come back to power. So I told the gentleman that, well, I'm sorry, I can't do much because I'm a foreign diplomat. I have just come here recently. And they, of course, know what is good for them. That was the only thing I could say. But the moment he left, I called the Indian leaders and told them about this message and said, it's my duty to convey it to you, but I'm not going to answer him. But, then they laughed it off. They said, this fellow is a buffoon, a joker, he doesn't know what's going on. And don't worry, Ambassador, we will take care of this. And don't worry about it. I said, no, it's you who know better. And but things got worse as time passed. The opposition was furious with the Indian community. And they decided to take it upon me rather than anybody else. And so in midnight hour, As the clock struck 1, I had 3 black men walking into my bedroom and beat me up left, right, and center. And hurt my wife also. They don't normally hurt women. But she also got hurt. And my son, of course, was outside, but he didn't. Anyway, it was a terrible situation. I had a broken limb and a broken leg. And I was in a hospital. Then I was flown to the special surgery hospital in New York to get my limbs back. And I came back and I stayed. I didn't run away, as many people expected me to do. And I said, 3 people are bad, but 23 million other people are good in this country. And so I live here. And that created a huge impact on the community. There have been several diplomats who were hurt in other incidents earlier, and most of them they left the next day. And so this gave me a great advantage with the president and others. They always said, you're an exceptional ambassador, you didn't run away. You are here with us. And so I got a large amount of advantages for the next, the period I spent afterwards there. And then the government of India decided to send me to Washington. At that time, Mr. Gujral was the prime minister, and he was my ambassador in Moscow. So he had a special interest in me. And so he said, you must go to Washington. Clinton is going to come to India, so you better do something about it. And then I went to Washington. Of course, that's the story that most people know, Clinton visit and Vajpayee's visit and so on. So in other words, even in the least expected of places, you get exciting things and never a dull moment if that is what you're looking for. But of course, there is the other side to it. This culture shock every 3 years, a new place, a new house, a new language, a new culture, new school for the children, new doctors, everything new every 3 years. It's a traumatic experience for anyone. But of course, the government is very supportive. We have a safety net in terms of facilities, good homes, good supporting staff, and everything. But in spite of all that, it's a traumatic experience every 3 years. And you don't know after 3 years where you will go. And if you look at my moves, you'll be astonished. I went to Tokyo, from there to Bhutan, from there to Moscow, Moscow to Delhi, Delhi to New York, New York to Burma, Burma to Fiji, Fiji to New York, then to Delhi, and then to New York, then to back to India again, and then Washington, Kenya, Washington, and back to Vienna. No single country is similar to the other. So it has all these experiences, particularly maybe for the family and the children, education. But we muddled through all this and did fairly well in the case of children education, or the case of our basic comforts. And therefore, there is a compensation for the amount of, it could be a stressful job, but at the same time, it is very, 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 very satisfying. Because whatever happens to you does not happen because of you. It has happened because you are representing a country. And that is a responsibility. So there are 2 sides to the coin, the charms and the challenges. And in the final analysis, when I got back and thinking about my postings, I said I had average temperature. In Moscow, I had -52. In Fiji, I had +42. So if you take the average temperature of all the places I have been, I would have lived in a comfortable climate all my life. And also about the comforts and other things. So it is an exciting career. Much of what the Foreign Service is not known. We all have written books, but I don't know how many people read it. Because they always tell me, you must write your story. I say I have written 7 books. And what more can I do? In the US, for example, when I go to a group and say, India has the largest Muslim population in the world after Indonesia, they're all puzzled. They always say, why didn't you tell us this so far? I said, how can I go and tell 250 million Americans? So communications are also not the ultimate. So anyway, I'll stop here, and if there are some questions or observations, I'll be happy to
thank you
respond.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We want to leave some space for question and answer session also, but I didn't stop you because I was also keenly listening to your stories. That's why. Even I forgot to tell you that we have question and session. Anyway.
No, certainly.
It's very interesting. I have read some of these stories, but still, again, when you hear from you yourself, no, it's more interesting. And I have Shanta Kumar. He's the president of APC of Thrissur. He said he want to ask you some questions.
Sure.
Can you hear me, Dr. Shanta Kumar?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, I can see you too.
Sir, yeah, right, sir. Sir, sir, Mr. Modi had been having a very cordial relationship with Mr. Trump. And in fact, he had even gone to US to work for Mr. Trump or indirectly canvassing for him. Now with the change in dispensation in US, how will the US will be looking at India, or how will be our relationship? Will be as cordial as earlier? Or?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't touch upon policy or foreign affairs or etc. I was making it very personal. But this is a question I hear every day. And my answer is there will be no difference. Because Modi, what he was trying was to tame Trump. He was not in love with Trump. Nobody can be in love with him. Tolerating him for 4 years was very difficult. And most heads of state had great problems with him. But what Modi did was to manage Trump in a way. So all that he did for him, saying that you will be the next president of the next president also will you be, but is it next occasion Modi Trump. These are all just techniques to keep this man in some kind of comfort zone. And that he managed to do. And except for trade in so many others and immigration, these are the two things on which, of course, nothing much could be done. പക്ഷേ ഇതിൽ കൂടുതൽ ഒരുപാട് പ്രോബ്ലംസ് അങ്ങനെ നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടി ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാമായിരുന്നു. അത് നടക്കാതിരുന്നത് മോദിയുടെ ആ ഒരു അപ്രോച്ച് കൊണ്ടാണ്. പക്ഷെ അതേ സമയത്ത് ഇപ്പോൾ ഇന്ത്യ അമേരിക്കൻ ബന്ധങ്ങൾ വളരെ സ്മൂത്താണ് ഒരു തരത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞാൽ. കാരണം there are no issues. 1998 ന്യൂക്ലിയർ ടെസ്റ്റ് കഴിഞ്ഞ 2 years we struggled very hard to normalize relations. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ പിന്നെ ഈ ബിഗ് ഇഷ്യൂ ഒന്നുമില്ല യുണൈറ്റഡ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്സും ഇന്ത്യയുമായിട്ട്. Immigration is an issue. And nuclear issue is no more there. And trade, of course, with everybody, we have the same problem. And Biden knows India very well. I am Vice President and he's visited India. He even had a great-grandfather in the East India Company and so on. So, and he is a generally gentle, but the advantage that we have now is that we have a predictable, consistent, traditional kind of a president. And that's all that we need. We don't need any of these fancy declarations by Trump. പക്ഷേ ആ ഫാൻസി ഡിക്ലറേഷൻ ഒക്കെ തിരിഞ്ഞ് ഹൈഡ്രോക്ലോറോക്കിൻ തന്നില്ലെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ നിങ്ങളോട് യുദ്ധം ചെയ്യുമെന്നവരെ പറഞ്ഞില്ലേ. So that kind of a man, why is it worth? പക്ഷേ ഒരു impression was generated that he is a friend, and so it's a loss for us. At least 10% Indians voted for him in America. No? They used to vote 80% for Democrats. Now only 70%. And that to 70% after the vice president was chosen. But before that, maybe 60% of the vote only Democrats would have got. അതൊക്കെ ഇതുകൊണ്ടാണ് മോദിയുടെ ഒരു ഫ്രണ്ടാണ് ട്രംപ്. അത് വെറും ഒരു ഇല്യൂഷൻ ആയിരുന്നു. I don't think it will make any difference.
Sir, if I may ask one more question.
Sure.
That Trump had 2 terms. In the first term, he was very critical about India. And that time our economy was not doing very well. Subsequently, when the economy started looking up, the American view or the world view on India has changed.
Yes,
now that India is not doing well, will we get the same warmth from other countries?
Well, nobody is doing well, so we are not special in that. The whole world is in a complete chaos, as you know, economically. So we're not doing badly. And some of the things we are doing, particularly in COVID and vaccine and giving support to smaller countries and all that, we are doing better than many of the developed countries. And the problems have arisen recently because of the Article 370 and CAA and now the farmers. And these have created some kind of difficulties for us. And we are taking this line that, these are our internal matters, you keep off. And that people don't accept. As I said, we have ourselves done dreadful things in other countries for our people. So how do you expect Trudeau to approve? Because Trudeau used to say, I have more Sikhs in my cabinet than Manmohan Singh has. So he has an interest. And so he will express that. The British will do the same. They did it more sweetly, that's all. So those things are causing us a problem. And also the Chinese situation. Because other, നമ്മൾ 370 ഒക്കെ ചെയ്തു, ലഡാക്കിൽ മാറ്റം വരുത്തി, അതൊക്കെ കൊണ്ട് ചൈനയും പാകിസ്ഥാനും കൂടെ ഒരു പുതിയ അലയൻസ്, മിലിറ്ററി അലയൻസ് ഉണ്ടാക്കിയിട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നതാണെന്നാണ് എൻ്റെ സംശയം. And that can be very serious because we can fight with the Pakistanis, but with China, we don't have a military option. We may be able to resist them on the borders and things like that, but an all-out war is out of the question with China. So we are in a difficulty at that stage. And so our policy is evolving. Americans under Trump were quite willing to embrace us, particularly Pompeo. Pompeo's അഭിപ്രായങ്ങളൊക്കെ. അദ്ദേഹം ഇയാളെ ചൈനയെന്ന് പോലും വിളിക്കില്ല. കമ്മ്യൂണിസ്റ്റ് പാർട്ടി ഓഫ് ചൈന, പ്രസിഡന്റ് ഓഫ് ചൈന എന്ന് പറയില്ല, ജനറൽ സെക്രട്ടറി ഓഫ് ദ പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ പാർട്ടി. അത്രയ്ക്ക് ചൈനയെ ഡീറെക്കഗ്നൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു പൊസിഷനായിരുന്നു. അത്ര ഒരു സപ്പോർട്ടൊന്നും നമുക്ക് ബൈഡനിൽ നിന്ന് കിട്ടില്ല. Because Biden is quite soft with China. And they have many more interest in China than in India. So he will play the game more gently like Obama, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ Clinton. Clinton ശരിക്കും ചൈനയായിട്ട് വളരെ അടുപ്പമായിരുന്നു. He was willing to hand over India to China to take care. That was his vision at one point. പക്ഷെ അതൊക്കെ മാറി. Democrats are also now quite upset about China. And so we will get that kind of support, definitely. But economic situation, everybody is looking bad. And so we cannot expect much support from others, particularly when trade agreements and all that. Like we had to be out of several things. China had a BR in the RCEP in the general regional unity or regional stability are important. അപ്പോൾ അതുകൊണ്ട് നമുക്ക് ക്വാഡ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഓസ്ട്രേലിയ, ജപ്പാൻ, ഇന്ത്യ ആൻഡ് US, ആൻഡ് ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് അവർ സോളിഡ് സപ്പോർട്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അതൊരു പോസിബിൾ അലയൻസ് ആയിട്ട് വരാവുന്നതേ ഉള്ളൂ. ബട്ട് വി റിഫ്യൂസ് ടു ബി അലൈൻഡ് ഇൻ എനി പർട്ടിക്കുലർ.
Any other questions from anybody?
Yes, I have a question.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. Ambassador, good evening. I am Manoharan from Delhi. I work with the RIS Research and Information System for developing countries for around 6 years, 1995 to 2001, working on international trade and environment. Dr. Panchmukhi.
I know RIS.
Yes.
Of course, very well.
So
Saran was there. No?
Yeah, thank you. And currently, I'm working on forest certification and related issues, and also teaching with School of Planning Architecture in Delhi. Sir, I wanted to actually ask you, what is your view on the revival of the WTO? Because the Doha ministerial meeting, after that, the Doha round of discussion somehow not seeing the light after many years. That is one query. And another query, how the trade and interest of the commodities from the Kerala, for example, pepper or spices, or many of the commodities of the global significance, how we could actually promote? Is it regionalism or regional trade is the way, or whether it's any scope for WTO could just take it more strength and support some of our interests? So there are different perceptions. I would like to know your thoughts on that.
Yes, first of all, I must take I must apologize that I have not dealt with trade issues. I've always been a political guy. But then all of us have to deal with these issues. And my perception today, WTO is dead. It's not active at all. Most of its machineries are not functioning. But a new Director General has come, and much depends on what the Americans want to do with WTO. Because the Americans have tended to find it as a nuisance for them. The trade representative was a riding a high horse and dictating to the world. That is the WTO that they want. And we always used to come in conflict with the Americans on WTO matters. But we would like WTO to be revived and all this mechanism, machinery to be brought in. And on trade agreements, we try to make it as close to the WTO requirements as possible. And there we have several problems, like the present problem about the farmers. You know, the subsidy is a big issue in WTO, as you know, the subsidies that we give to the farmers, or price restrictions, etc., etc. So now India is becoming a little more protectionist, as you may have noticed. You know, we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharata and so on. So the relaxation of the global trade, etc., we ourselves championed. Now we seem to be moving away. Our foreign minister the other day said that this globalization has deindustrialized India in certain respects. It's a serious charge. So we are now seeming to be pulling back. And some of these words that Mr. Modi uses has some ring of what Trump used to say. You know? Because, you know, instead of multilateralism and globalization, we are talking in terms of our own interests. So whether WTO will come back to its original shape, that is very crucial, and we are interested in that. And our own agricultural products are concerned. I remember, for example, when we signed an agreement with the Southeast Asian countries, there were a lot of protests in Kerala. Where some of our products became you know, unattractive for export, etc., etc. Even in this farmers' case, you know, Kerala farmers, though they are not very vocal, they have an interest. And but now we are moving more towards restricted trade or protectionism rather than openness. But then we cannot go back all the way to 1991. And so somewhere in the middle we'll stand. Because like, for example, Kerala products, if you take by themselves, it may be a loss in the sense that Kerala loses, say, 43 crores or whatever. But the other products, another 400 products on which we have tariff concessions, they, on the whole, India gains, say, let us say 250 crores. Then the 43 crores, they can just pay to Kerala and just manage the system like that. So it has to be internally managed. We may not be able to satisfy Kerala's needs in terms of their agricultural products. But at the end, it all levels out.
So we have a few more questions.
Thank you, sir.
We have Murli joining from Geneva.
Can I ask?
Yeah, after that, Bishop Rao is also there. So Murli, are you there, Murli?
Yes.
We are asking questions to each other all the time, Murli.
Thank you, T P S. I'm just using this as an opportunity to say hello to you.
Good.
After some time. I am actually simultaneously attending another meetings. You know, this is the story of our life these days. That's why I said I wanted to rush.
Disasters.
I have one question, TPS. You know, in this post-COVID world, we are able to work from home, and you know, we are able to. And I'm able to sit in Perumbavoor and work. You know, do my work in Geneva. People are able to sit in, you know, village and work in San Francisco, Singapore, etc. Now, in the past, one of the biggest issue was the barrier for labor to cross, you know, borders. Because every country was migration issue, whether they will go and settle down. So my question is, will it open up, you know, countries like China or Japan to us? Where historically we have very, very, very little presence because of the fear of, you know, China because of political reason, but Japan because of, you know, their inherent resistance to migration from any place. So in this new world, would movement of labor become a lot more easier because it's a job which is moving rather than people? Thank you.
No, that's, maybe you didn't hear the first part of what I was saying. I was saying that all these professions have changed and diplomacy has suffered the most because online diplomacy has nothing to offer. compared to my exciting career of 37 years, and I did not know where I would be tomorrow. Last 9 months, I have not got onto a plane. You know. It's a major change. And it's not going to be very attractive. So I would rather go back to the old situation. And I hope the new normal does not become the current situation, and go back at least 50%, at least a hybrid situation will be there for people to move around and so on. But migration is going to be less, because even in the Gulf, they will start telling our Malayalis that you can go and sit in Perumbavoor and work for us. You don't need to get a visa to come here. And that will happen inevitably, because we have all found that this is a cheaper exercise. Webinars are much cheaper than seminars. Nobody needs to travel, and there are so many comforts in this. But what is going to change is that the movement of people, as you said, will be much less. But something will turn up to make that more attractive, because I do not think that, mankind is not a kind of isolated animals in different parts of the world. We have to interact. So technology will probably take us there physically, that kind of situation may come. And therefore, it is not going to be further divided. The world is not going to be further divided. And they'll come together in some form or the other. And therefore, I don't think that this will become the normal. The normal will be the previous one. On China and Japan, why there are not too many Indians there is basically the language. Because I'm sure the Chinese may be willing to offer a lot of jobs to the Indians. But how do you function? And Chinese is not an easy language. Same about Japanese. My optional language is Japanese. But how many people do you see who concentrate on Japanese studies or Chinese studies and learn the language, etc.? And so there is no resistance to that, but they are not migrant countries. And therefore, it will not attract as many people as the United States or UK attract the Indians. So I don't see any big difference there. But the technological advantage will get us closer to China and Japan also.
Dr. Lal, can I ask?
Thank you, sir. Let me ask Srinivasan, sir. Srinivasan,
Can I ask Dr. Lal?
Only 3 minutes to 6. Will you be able to take a couple of more questions? You have time?
Yes, I am all right.
Okay, Shaji, go
I
ahead.
have no other another webinar tonight.
Shaji, before that, I had another.
Good evening, sir.
Really?
Yeah, good evening, sir. Am I audible to you?
Yes.
Good evening, sir. I'm Shaji Shankar from Mumbai.
Yep.
The other day, I was going through the seminal book written by Shyam Sharan, How India Sees the World.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you would have read it.
Yeah, sure.
He makes a very astounding. He makes a very astounding claim that in 1980, when he was ambassador in Burma, he came across a letter written by Pandit Nehru to UNU, the then premier of Burma, in which he quotes from a conversation he had with Chou En-lai. And Chou En-lai, it seems, assured Nehru that they are prepared to accept McMahon Line in eastern sector, where India's border with China. Eastern sector, only thing is that they have some problem about calling it the McMahon Line. Otherwise, they don't have any problem with the status quo there. Their problem is only with the western sector. And that was the thing. And Pandit Nehru did not envisage any border conflicts at that point in time, sometime around 57, 58. But later on, as you know, history took a different turn. And he again makes a claim that in 85, Deng Xiaoping was in power in China. They offered a package proposal almost on similar lines. But subsequent to that, due to the asymmetry in the power, 11 trillion, 12 trillion dollar economy for China and just $2 trillion economy for India, they had no intention to settle the border issue. And here's that Mahabalipuram summit turned out to fiasco, and you have a border conflict. Given this context, what do you think would be the eventual resolution of the Indo-China issue? This is my question.
Okay, this is no surprise. This has been known for several years.
Yeah.
And Shyam was not in 80s. He was in 90s that he was in Burma. But the story relates to the earlier period. And this package proposal was there not only before the war, but also after the war. Because after the war, they told us that we will take off our claim for Arunachal Pradesh, provided you take off your claim for Aksai Chin, because that was more important for them. And they knew that they will never get Arunachal Pradesh. But we were the ones who declined.
Okay.
India declined, saying that, no,
Okay.
we want our 34,000 square kilometers back. But a few years later, when G. Parthasarathy was in China, he was asked to go and explore this further with the Chinese. And the Chinese said, we have never heard about this. You know, of course, accepting McMahon line was out of the question, because in 1914, they had rejected it, you know, as Tibet. So they would not accept it. But what they were saying was a redrawing of the map in such a way that their claim on Arunachal Pradesh will be withdrawn. And we should, and Nehru was inclined, you know, remember Nehru once said that there is not even a blade of grass grows in Aksai Chin, you know, saying that is not so important to us. But at that time, the spirit, I was a schoolboy at that time, we used to say, we will not talk to the Chinese till we get Aksai Chin back, you know, that was the spirit at that time. And therefore, we didn't use it. Maybe if we had pursued it at that time, we would have got it. And what you rightly say, that the asymmetry in development of these two countries has made them stronger and made them less resistant to any compromise. And the advantage of a dispute is that they can come and walk into our country anytime and then create problems and then withdraw. And this has become their policy. And so we have missed the bus, I must say.
At some point, they also demanded Tawang from Arunachal Pradesh, isn't it?
Well, now they claim
wanted
the whole
Tawang
of Arunachal Pradesh.
Entirely
No, now they claim
so absolutely
the
no
whole of
possibility.
Arunachal Pradesh.
No,
not at all. Tawang became
southern Tibet for them.
Yeah, but Tawang came into focus because they are afraid that the next Dalai Lama will be born in Tawang. In which case they will have a crisis.
Mr. Prabhu, are you still there? Mr. Prabhu, you have it. Yeah, please.
Here.
Yes, thank you.
I already
Thank
posted
you.
the question.
What a paradise you are in. Is it a background only, or you are in a paradise?
No, we make our own paradises.
Sargavum, Naragavum, ഒരുപോലെ എന്നല്ലേ?
The background is like hellish, but then I make the foreground heavenish.
Yeah, this looks like Fiji paradise.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that actually when you were talking about Fiji.
Yeah.
So I posted this question already in the chat box. Dear Ambassador, what do you envisage? What do you expect about India's role, significance, and decisive participation in global affairs in the next 15 to 20 years? Like you have already discussed, like how we have changed our degree of involvement in the global affairs in the last 20, 30 years. Now, what do you think in the next 20 years would happen? In a very, very broad and with your vision, what do you think? With the technological advancement we have got, the intellectual manpower, globalization of the intellectual manpower and other things. That's
a reality. Certainly India will become important, but other countries will become more important. So relatively where we will stand, I cannot say. See, there is a gap of 20 years between India and China, maybe about 40 years between India and the United States. And they will also grow. They will not just wait for us to grow and overcome them. So that's not going to happen. But India has to be involved in the decision-making of global affairs. It has happened during the 2008 economic crisis. Everybody turned to Manmohan Singh for an answer. That's how Obama became a great admirer of Dr. Manmohan Singh. So India's position has always been significant, and it will increase the more economic strength you have, the more military strength you have. If COVID had not come, we are on a good, very important trajectory. And but we have been stopped in that. And once you resume that, certainly you cannot exclude the second largest country in the world from global affairs. And even now we are playing a big role. But then we want to be a permanent member of the Security Council, which is not easy. We want to be included in all the trade conglomerates all around the world. We are not in APEC. We are not in RECP now. We are not in BRI. So we have to integrate more and more with the global arrangement. But the world is going to be different. It's going to change. Even if COVID had not come, a lot of things would have changed. And we certainly hope that we will not be the center of the world. We will be at least one of the 6 centers of the world. That is United States, European Union, China, then Japan, India. So this is the kind of multipolar world that we are expecting. And that I'm sure we'll be able to reach. We will not dominate the world, and we have no such ambitions. But we will certainly matter as far as global affairs are concerned.
Dr. Krishna Prasad from Scotland, he's my classmate too. He has a question. Krishna Prasad, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon.
Nice to meet you.
Are you a
I'm
golfer? Are you a golfer in Scotland?
Probably only Scott who doesn't play golf, but my house has also always got golfers there, including this weekend.
I see. Okay, I went to Scotland only to play golf.
Yes, you are most welcome, sir. It's got all the kit at my home.
Right.
So I'm taking you to a different role of yours, which is as educationist.
Sure.
Okay. It's basically, Ambassador, with the Brexit coming, I'm one of the educational committee members of the Royal College. And we have a lot of opportunities actually to get people, especially now with the European Union not going to interfere, able to get the trainees from India, whichever specialty, medicine, engineering, banking, whatever. But one of the biggest hindrances we have is the lack of uniformity of syllabus and scoring systems. And that's why we still have licensing exams before they get into the country, like PLAB. How far have we progressed with having a sort of a uniform syllabus across with a uniform modified or codified examination all over the country? That's especially with the view of Brexit giving a lot of opportunities.
Well, I presume that you are familiar with what I tried to do. What you are saying, that's exactly what I tried to do for 5 years. And you know what I got? I got a slap on my face, literally.
Unfortunately, I saw that video. I was very upset, and I had written in Hindu at that point of time. So
yeah, no, because that is because we are still in an old world. You see, there is no affiliation system in any part of the world. We got it from UK, and we still keep it. Now we are saying 2030 we'll abolish it. So we live in silos. These multidisciplinary institutions that Prime Minister Modi is talking about is a far away the situation, because we don't move. The Kerala government said that the new education policy is a death knell of education in Kerala. Can you believe that? Because they want to completely stick to this outmoded 19th century situation. And we are supposed to be preparing for the 21st century. So this will happen. Of course, it will not happen in Kerala, but it will happen in other parts of the country. We have now private universities. We probably will have foreign universities coming. Today, can you believe that even from Kerala University to Calicut University, if a student has to go, it's a huge exercise to get his credits transferred. Now, of course, there is a new system coming that credits can be stored in a bank and you can make use of it. So we are moving in that direction, but we are not moving in such a way that we can align with the systems in other parts of the world. I say that in the last 10 years, education has changed more than it did in the last 100 years. This is true everywhere else, except here. And when are we going to be ready for it? But the system does not permit that. And people are not learned enough to understand that we are supposed to be very intelligent people, but we don't seem to know that. And they are not even willing to listen. What did I do in education except making speeches? I was not able to accomplish anything except autonomous colleges. All other things are just reports. But still they thought that I had to be stopped. So I'm not very optimistic on that score. But some Indians will make it. Some Indians will make a big impact, as it is already happening. Any place in the world I've been, I find a scholar or a Nobel Prize winner or someone like that who had the same education that I had here. So it is possible for individuals to be excellent, but the system is not going to cope with that.
Actually,
hello.
I just wanted to add something to that.
Yeah.
The history of the formation of Kerala University is a very interesting subject. It took almost 12 years for the then government and the people and the scholars and the academia to start thinking of what kind of a structure we should have for the Kerala University. by
This is Maharaja's
1936
time.
also.
Maharaja's time or
Yes,
Travancore
yes,
University.
yes.
Mm.
Yeah, so there was a lot of limitation. We had geographical limitations. So the then government actually wanted more people to be facilitated with education, and most of the people were going to the Madras University at that time. So when we formed the university for Kerala, the going to be Kerala, they envisaged something like a united Kerala, a university for all the people in Kerala. I mean, the Travancore, Malabar, and Cochin, those who are speaking Malayalam. So if we can actually go through the history of that. Those old books are now available. And when you go to that, you will find that the affiliation was a very specific problem or a solution for us at that time, which we can dispense with. That was the case, but we are still with that affiliation mania.
Yeah, I know. I've been fighting that. And these 20 colleges, autonomous colleges I created, the universities destroyed them. The government and the universities together, because they thought that they were losing their revenue or losing their importance. So we are very narrow in these respects. But when I have a Kerala University degree, which was for the whole state. Kerala University was for the whole state at that time. But now Kerala University is only one part of it. But all these barriers should go. Everything should be open. People should be able to move freely, and ability should be the only criterion. Till that happens, we can simply, dream about a happy future in education.
So if you don't have any more question, we can conclude. Is there any burning question left?
Yeah, I think there's a burning question in the chat box. Somebody K. This is not a serious question he wrote. I think diplomats are often asked this question, and in Kerala you might have encountered this question more often. How good are the spirits in various countries? Sort of comparative assessment.
Of the spirits. And that is one misunderstanding about diplomats. You think that the diplomats drink all the time, right? But you will be surprised to know there are more teetotalers among diplomats in Europe than anywhere else. So it's not, it's like the image of the army. People think that the army drinks a lot of alcohol, but many army officers don't touch. So, but this is, in diplomacy, it is a kind of requirement, supposedly. My father, when I joined the Foreign Service, he had only 2 instructions. He says, don't drink and don't marry a foreigner. So at least the second promise I gave him, I kept. But I cannot say I kept the first promise, because it is necessary. It's a kind of lubricant for conversations. And as long as it is moderate, it is good. But of course, everybody knows which spirit is better than the others anywhere in the world. Anyway, concluding the discussion, I must say that I had not expected that this would turn into a policy discussion. So maybe if you're interested, we should have another one. I was trying to keep it to a kind of life in the foreign service in that concept. But I see that many people are interested in policy, and maybe another time we can do that.
Yeah, we will definitely invite you again, sir.
Thank you.
So if you don't have any more questions, I would like to thank Sreenivasan sir on behalf of all of you who have joined today from different parts of the world and the country, and on behalf of Friday Open House. Thank you, sir, again. Thank you very much. And
thank you. Thank you.
We have to invite you again for another, because see, we have done it for 75 minutes now. Yeah, even I don't feel that I have spent 75 minutes, because all this talk was full of life stories and experience, and especially when you hear from the person itself, it's really interesting. And so thank you very much. And thank you. And if you are available with subsequent Fridays, you can also join us.
Sure.
We'll send you invites, especially when we have some very interesting topics. We'll definitely. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, bye.